The stars shimmered above Earth like 1,000 silent witnesses. To the rest of the galaxy, this small blue planet was nothing, an afterthought at the edge of a forgotten arm of the Milky Way. Its people were noisy, emotional, and unpredictable. They laughed too loudly, fought too fiercely, and dreamed too much. To the Galactic Alliance, humanity was a child among titans. They called Earth the Feral Nursery. It was a name spoken with laughter in the marble halls of alien worlds. The elder races, ancient beings of light, scale, and crystal, saw humanity as a curiosity, a species too young to understand the order of things. They measured civilizations in millennia, and by that scale, humans were barely crawling out of their cradle. When humans built their first warp gate, the Alliance watched with amusement. When humans colonized Mars, they whispered that it was a cute display of ambition. And when the first Terran ambassador walked into the Galactic Council chamber, standing small and trembling before the towering alien delegates, the laughter in the room was loud enough to echo through history. "Let them speak," one of the elders said, his voice smooth as glass. "It will be entertaining." The human ambassador, Ren Carter, had stood tall nonetheless. "We come not as subjects," he said, voice firm, "but as equals." The hall had gone silent, then came the laughter again. For years, Earth played the game. Humanity signed the treaties, shook the alien hands, and obeyed the rules of the Alliance. But beneath the surface, beneath the smiles and bows, the old fire burned. The same fire that had driven humans to cross oceans, to climb mountains, to look up at the stars and say, "Those belong to us too." The elder races could not understand it. To them, emotion was weakness. Rage, grief, hope, these were flaws to be erased, not embraced. They did not see that emotion was the source of humanity's strength, that it gave meaning to every act, every sacrifice, every war. And they never noticed how Earth was preparing. When the Alliance began taking protective control of nearby colonies, humans did not fight back, not yet. They allowed the alien administrators to guide their trade and monitor their militaries. They let alien fleets patrol Sol's borders, their banners shining like suns. They endured insult after insult, loss after loss, with cold, bitter patience. They were waiting. The breaking point came quietly, as great tragedies often do. It was a merchant ship, the Caldris Dawn, carrying families from Mars to the colonies beyond Jupiter. A small vessel, unarmed, painted with the white insignia of neutrality. It drifted peacefully through the void until it met a patrol from the Angeran hierarchy, a reptilian race proud of their military strength. What happened next was never fully explained. Some said it was a sensor malfunction. Others claimed it was deliberate. But the result was the same. The Caldris Dawn was erased from existence in a flash of white light. There were no survivors. When the footage reached Earth, silence fell across every nation, every city. The last transmission from the doomed ship, the scream of a child, a mother's cry for help, played across every screen. And something ancient awoke in the human heart. At first, the Alliance dismissed the outrage. "A misunderstanding," they said, "an unfortunate accident." They sent apologies wrapped in polished words, treaties filled with hollow promises. But the people of Earth no longer listened. The Terran Protectorate, the unified defense council of all human nations, convened behind locked doors. Generals, admirals, and scientists gathered in secret, their faces grim. They did not weep. They did not rage. They planned. Beneath the oceans, shipyards lit up like suns. In orbit, silent stations reactivated ancient engines and AI cores long hidden from alien eyes. Human engineers whispered to each other about Project Retribution, a name no one dared to speak too loudly. The Alliance noticed the movement but shrugged it off. What could humans possibly do? Their fleets were small, their technology primitive, their homeworld undefended. The elder races had forgotten one truth: humanity never needed permission to evolve. When the Terran fleet launched, there was no declaration, no ceremony. One moment the night sky was quiet. The next, it was alive with engines brighter than dawn. From the shadow of the moon rose the UNS Retribution fleet. Hundreds of warships, sleek, dark, and silent. Each ship bore a single emblem, a silver star with a crimson scar through its center. To those who saw it, it looked like a wound in heaven. The broadcast went out across the galaxy. The face of Admiral Elias Vega filled the transmission, a man whose eyes burned with the cold light of vengeance. "This is the United Nations Space Command," he said. You took from us the stars, you took from us our people, you called it peace, we call it theft. He paused, the silence stretching like the void itself. You wanted to see humanity's strength, he said finally. Now you will. Then the transmission ended. Across the Milky Way, alien worlds trembled. The Andorans scrambled their fleets, laughing at the thought of human defiance. Let them come, their admirals said. We will crush them before their engines cool. But they did not understand. They could not. Humanity's ships did not move like others. Their weapons were not bound by the laws the Alliance had written. They carried rail cannons that tore through shields, fusion drives that burned brighter than suns, and artificial minds that had been forbidden for centuries by galactic law. They were no longer explorers, they were executioners. The first battle lasted 12 minutes. When the UNS Helios opened fire above Angera Prime, it was as if the night itself had turned against the planet. Beams of kinetic fury ripped through the enemy fleet. Drones the size of insects swarmed enemy hulls, cutting through armor with molecular blades. The Andorans screamed through the comm channels. Impossible, they're breaking the barrier, our shields. Then static. The humans said nothing. They moved in silence, their ships gliding through wreckage and flame. One by one, the alien ships fell, their bright lights extinguished in the endless dark. When it was over, the void was quiet again. Admiral Vega stood on the bridge of the Helios, staring at the burning planet below. His face was unreadable. He gave no order to destroy the cities. He simply said, "Let them remember." Back on Earth, people gathered beneath the stars. They watched the flicker of distant fires on their screens and whispered a single word that spread from one continent to another, a word that carried both grief and pride. Retribution. For the first time in history, the galaxy understood what it meant to provoke the children of Earth. And the war had only just begun. The stars over Earth burned quietly, as if holding their breath. The war had begun, but the galaxy didn't know it yet. To the rest of the Alliance, the humans were still recovering from the Cauldrus Dawn tragedy, still licking their wounds, still the same fragile species that bent to the will of older, wiser civilizations. They were wrong. In the silence of deep space, far from the eyes of alien spies, the UNS Retribution fleet moved like a shadow. No lights, no signals, no hesitation. The humans had always been masters of chaos, but now chaos had discipline. Every ship, every crew member, every artificial mind aboard the fleet shared a single purpose that pulsed through their veins like fire: vengeance. It started with whispers across the comm networks, reports of Andoran patrols going dark, entire outposts disappearing from sensors. The Alliance tried to dismiss it at first. Asteroid impacts, they said. System malfunctions. But soon the reports became screams. Then came the fire. At the edge of the Andoran system, the UNS Helios emerged from folded space, its hull black as midnight and thrumming with power. The Andorans, confident in their strength, scrambled their defense fleet, 112 ships strong. Their flagship, the Sovereign Fang, towered over them all, bristling with plasma lances and ion cannons. The Andoran admiral, a proud creature named Keshvar, smirked when he saw the humans on his screen. "You have courage," he hissed, "but courage is not power." On the Helios, Admiral Elias Vega stood in silence. Around him, his crew waited, tension thick as smoke. The bridge was dim, lit only by the glow of holographic screens. Vega's eyes were calm, his voice quiet when he finally spoke. "Unleash the storm." The words hung in the air for a single heartbeat. Then the universe exploded. The first railgun salvo hit the Sovereign Fang before its shields could fully charge. Metal screamed as armor cracked open like glass. The Andoran fleet scrambled to respond, but human ships didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't move in predictable formations or rely on energy weapons that flared bright and slow. They were fast, precise, ruthless. Hundreds of microdrones erupted from Terran hangars, tiny, black-winged machines that darted through shield gaps and tore through systems like living shrapnel. Every explosion painted the void with brief flashes of light before being swallowed again by the dark. In 12 minutes, half the Andoran fleet was gone. "Impossible," Keshvar roared. "How are they doing this? Where are their shields?" "There are no shields," his second-in-command whispered. They're using armor." That single word chilled the blood of every Andoran officer. No one used armor anymore, it was primitive, outdated. Shields were cleaner, safer, more civilized. But humans had always favored the brutal over the beautiful. Their ships could take a hit that would vaporize others. They could burn, crack, bleed, and keep fighting. And fight they did. From the Helios, Admiral Vega watched as the last of the Andoran ships tried to flee. He raised his hand, voice steady. No survivors. His weapons officers hesitated. Sir, they're retreating. They started this war by burning families, Vega said. End it by burning fleets. Moments later, the void bloomed with light again. When the light faded, only wreckage remained, twisted metal drifting silently among the stars. Endura Prime itself stood defenseless. The Terran fleet entered orbit, their cannons aimed down at the glittering cities below. On the surface, billions of alien citizens stared up at the sky, seeing black ships where once their own banners had flown. Admiral Vega gave a single order: open the channels. The entire planet heard his voice. This is the Terran Protectorate. You took our people. You burned our children. You called it protection. His tone did not rise, but every word carried weight, as if spoken by the universe itself. You will learn what protection truly means. And then silence. The humans didn't fire. They didn't drop bombs or scorch the planet. They left it alive, scarred, and trembling, because mercy, they knew, was sometimes the sharpest blade of all. The message reached the rest of the galaxy within hours. Every race, every world, every government that had once mocked Earth now stared in disbelief. The Andoran fleet, the pride of the Alliance, was gone. One system had fallen. But the worst part wasn't the loss, it was the realization. Humanity had done this alone. No allies, no borrowed technology, no support, just sheer relentless willpower and the kind of rage that made the stars themselves seem small. The Galactic Council convened in panic. Reports flooded in, Terran fleets mobilizing across Sol, human colonies fortifying, AI cores activating despite strict alliance bans. Every law the Council had made to prevent war, the humans were now breaking and winning. The elder of the Voltar Collective, an old being of silver light, spoke in a voice trembling with disbelief. They are primitives. How can they do this? A Kelari scientist, smaller and sharper, whispered, because they were forged by death. Their history is made of war. They fought each other for millennia, and now they fight together. The council chambers fell silent. Back on Earth, the people did not celebrate. They mourned. Every home, every family still carried the pain of the Cauldrous Dawn, but now their grief had a direction. It had purpose. Factories ran without rest. Shipyards in orbit over Luna burned bright as new stars. Every day, more ships joined the Retribution fleet, crewed by farmers, engineers, students, and soldiers. Humanity had always been good at one thing: adaptation. Now they adapted to war. The news reached the farthest corners of the galaxy. To some, it was a warning, to others, a prophecy. On a small moon orbiting a forgotten world, a group of alien mercenaries listened to the broadcast in stunned silence. One of them, a scarred veteran of 100 battles, shook his head slowly. They've woken something ancient, he said. The galaxy won't survive it. Another asked softly, what do you mean? The veteran stared out at the stars. Humans don't fight to conquer, they fight to end things. And in the heart of the Sol system, Admiral Vega stood before a vast holographic map of the galaxy. Every Alliance world was marked in red. His officers waited for his command. He said only 3 words. Prepare the next strike. Outside, in the cold silence of space, the human fleet turned its engines toward the stars. The fire from the First War still burned in their wake, a scar across the heavens. The galaxy had thought humanity weak, but now it would learn a terrible truth. They were not conquerors. They were survivors. And survivors don't forgive. The galaxy had gone quiet. Every transmission, every signal, every whisper carried one name now: Earth. The fall of the Andoran fleet had shattered the illusion of peace the Galactic Alliance had wrapped itself in for millennia. Whole sectors watched the footage of human ships moving through space like shadows of vengeance. The proud Andoran homeworld still burned in orbit, its broken fleets drifting as silent monuments to humanity's fury. Across the stars, fear began to grow. The Alliance gathered again, desperate to prove that humanity's victory was a fluke, an accident of tactics or luck. The elder species spoke of balance and justice, but their trembling hands betrayed them. For the first time in thousands of years, the so-called masters of the galaxy were afraid. They called for unity, they called for war. In the Sol system, Earth's skies were no longer blue. They burned with the light of construction, orbital shipyards, factories, and launch bays humming with relentless purpose. Every continent was united under one banner now, the Terran Protectorate. Nations that had once argued for power or politics stood shoulder to shoulder. The world had become a forge. In the command halls beneath Luna's surface, Admiral Elias Vega stood before a wall of holographic maps. Red dots marked enemy worlds. Blue lines traced human fleets as they fanned out like a storm front ready to break. His eyes were tired but unyielding. Behind him, Commander Sarai Kane entered, her uniform crisp, her voice low. The Alliance has mobilized. They're calling it the Great Coalition Fleet. How many? Vega asked. 1,000,000 ships, she said. Every major race has sent something. For a moment, Vega didn't speak. Then he smiled, a small, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Good, then we won't have to hunt them one by one. Sarai frowned. We're outnumbered 50-1, Admiral. 50-1, Vega repeated softly. That's about even. She didn't understand how he could sound so calm. But that was Vega, unshakable, carved from stone and sorrow. The loss of the Cauldress Dawn had taken his family. He never spoke of it. He didn't need to. Every order he gave was built on that pain. The battle came at a place the galaxy would later call Theta Crucible. A dead system, once home to a collapsed star. No atmosphere, no light, only drifting debris and the quiet hum of gravitational scars. The Great Coalition fleet arrived first. Their formation filled half the system, sleek golden cruisers from the Kalari Dominion, spiked leviathans from the Voltar, crystalline dreadnoughts from the Mer Collective. Their combined light made the void glow like dawn. They were ready for war. When the human fleet arrived, it looked pitiful in comparison. Barely 20,000 ships, dark and silent, their hulls black against the stars. The enemy laughed at the sight. This is the best they have, someone sneered across the open comms. Let them die quickly. But the humans didn't answer. They didn't broadcast, didn't taunt. They moved like predators, quiet, waiting for the moment to strike. Inside the UNS Nemesis, humanity's flagship, Commander Sarai Kane watched the wall of enemies through the viewport. Her heart pounded. There's too many, she whispered. Admiral Vega stood beside her, arms folded. Numbers don't win wars, he said. Resolve does. The fleet AI Argus spoke then, its voice calm and human-like. Admiral, Event Horizon Protocol is prepared. Once activated, containment will be impossible. Good, Vega said. Let them see what impossible looks like. The first shot of the battle came from the Alliance. 1,000 beams of plasma and light cut across the void, slamming into the human formation. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the Terran fleet moved. Human ships scattered into tight, shifting formations, their movements unpredictable, almost chaotic, but every maneuver was calculated down to the second. Enemy sensors couldn't lock on, their targeting arrays filled with static. Then came the counterattack. The Nemesis opened fire with its spinal cannon, a railgun longer than a city. The slug it fired was a mountain of metal accelerated to near light speed. It passed through an entire enemy line, tearing ships apart before their shields even registered impact. And then the black holes appeared. Across the system, gravity wells began to bloom, tiny, controlled singularities forming like seeds of darkness. Human scientists had sworn this technology would never be used, but desperation had burned away morality long ago. Ships were torn apart by their own mass. Fleets collided as space itself twisted and folded. Light bent, time screamed. Impossible, the Voltar High Admiral gasped. They're weaponizing gravity. The humans didn't respond. They pressed forward through chaos and flame, their ships tearing through the wreckage like sharks through blood. The Alliance tried to regroup, but their comms were dead. The singularities had shredded quantum communication across the entire sector. They couldn't talk, they couldn't coordinate, they could only die. Inside the Nemesis, alarms blared, metal groaned, and fire licked the walls. The ship was taking hits faster than its systems could repair. Sarai gripped the console. Hull integrity at 30%. Keep firing, Vega said, his voice calm, steady. They'll destroy us, she shouted. He turned to her then, his eyes like steel. They already tried that once. It didn't work. Outside, the human fleet fought like demons. Smaller ships rammed into enemy cruisers, detonating nuclear payloads at point-blank range. Fighter pilots flew into the mouths of battleships, firing until their hulls vaporized. It wasn't strategy, it was fury given form. Hours passed, though it felt like days. One by one, the Alliance ships fell silent. The light of their explosions faded into the black. And then there was nothing left. The stars returned, cold and indifferent, as the last enemy ship drifted into the dark. Admiral Vega stood on the scorched bridge, breathing the recycled air heavy with smoke and iron. "Status?" he asked quietly. 70% of our fleet is gone, Sarai said, her voice trembled. We've won, but at what cost? Vega looked out at the wreckage. Millions had died on both sides. The void was full of corpses and twisted metal. At every cost, he said. News of the battle spread faster than light. The great coalition fleet, the pride of the galaxy, was no more. The Terrans, outnumbered 50-1, had destroyed them. The elder races wept in silence. Some refused to believe it, others prepared to flee. The galaxy had seen empires rise and fall, but never like this. Never to a species so young, so unrefined, so human. Back on Earth, people stood beneath dark skies, watching the stars as the news played across every screen. Children whispered the name Vega. Families wept for those who would never return, but in their hearts they felt something stronger than grief. Pride. For the first time, humanity had stood against the galaxy and survived. And somewhere, far away, among the drifting remains of the great fleet, a single human transmission echoed across the void. We are done being silent. The galaxy listened, and it trembled. The galaxy burned. Where once there had been unity, now there was only panic. The great coalition fleet, the proud symbol of the Galactic Alliance's power, was gone. Millions of ships had vanished into the dark, erased by a single human armada that should never have stood a chance. The broadcasts were replayed endlessly. Footage of Terran ships gliding through broken stars, of black holes ripping apart fleets that had ruled for ages. Entire civilizations stared in disbelief. Children of alien worlds whispered of humans as monsters born from war, gods of destruction wearing mortal skin. The Alliance tried to hold itself together. They told their people the humans had used forbidden weapons. They called it terrorism, madness, and atrocity, but deep down they knew the truth. They had poked a sleeping beast, and the beast was now fully awake. In the war chambers above Earth, the lights were dim. Holograms of fallen fleets and burning worlds hovered in the air like ghosts. Admiral Elias Vega stood before them, his face carved from stone. Around him sat the new council of the Terran Protectorate, leaders, generals, and scientists who had united under one goal, to end the war before it ended humanity. Commander Sarai Kane stood at his side, her uniform scorched from the Battle of Theta Crucible. She hadn't slept in days. The air around her smelled faintly of ozone and steel. The Alliance is rearming, she reported. Scouts say the Kelari are mobilizing 4 sectors worth of ships. The Voltar are drafting civilians. Even the Mur are awakening their planet cores. Vega didn't look away from the hologram. Let them, he said. The harder they fight, the faster they'll fall. Sarai's voice softened. And what about us, sir? We've lost too much already. Vega turned to her then, and for a moment she saw not an admiral, but a man who had already buried everything he loved. Loss is what makes us dangerous, Commander. It's what keeps us alive. He looked back to the stars. Begin the counterstrike. The galaxy had never seen war like this. The Terran fleets didn't move like armies, they moved like storms. They struck where the enemy least expected, vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Communication networks fell first, then shipyards, then entire worlds. On Voltar Prime, the skies turned red as orbital bombardments tore through the clouds. The defenders fought bravely, but their plasma weapons melted against the armor of Terran dreadnoughts. When the smoke cleared, human boots walked across the soil of a world that had once ruled half the Alliance. A message was transmitted across the system. You took from us peace, we return to you silence. No one could jam it, no one could stop hearing it. In the heart of the Kelari Dominion, the alien High Council gathered in terror. The Kelari were a proud race, tall, graceful, and intelligent beyond measure. For centuries they had seen themselves as the architects of order. But now their cities flickered with fear. "They will destroy us all," one counselor cried. "Their fleets are unstoppable." Another slammed his fist against the table. "We have the numbers, they cannot win forever." An older Kelari, his scales dimmed with age, whispered quietly, "You don't understand. They don't fight for conquest. They fight because we made them hurt." His words hung in the air like a curse. Outside, alarms began to wail. A fleet had entered orbit. The skies split open as human warships descended like falling suns. On the bridge of the UNS Helios, Admiral Vega watched the battle unfold. "Kelari defense grid is active," a lieutenant reported. "Their orbital cannons are locking on." "Good," Vega said simply. "Let them fire." The sky lit up with plasma storms. Massive energy bolts slammed into the Helios, shattering its shields, but the ship held. Armor screamed. Crew shouted. Fires raged across the decks. "Return fire," Vega ordered. The ship's main cannons roared to life. Beams of kinetic energy ripped through Kelari defenses, turning once beautiful towers into molten rivers of glass. The sound of war echoed through space, a heartbeat of thunder and fury. The Kelari flagship, Sunspire Eternal, tried to retreat, but the Helios caught it in its tractor beams and dragged it closer, closer, until the two ships were nose to nose. Admiral Vega appeared on their comm screen, his face illuminated by the fires of his own ship. "You wanted humanity to kneel," he said softly. "This is us standing." And then he ordered the final strike. The explosion consumed the orbit, a ring of flame that spread across the heavens. Back on Earth, the people didn't cheer. They watched in silence as the reports came in: another victory, another world fallen, another piece of the galaxy burning. Children grew up under skies filled with Terran warships. Soldiers returned home with eyes that no longer saw beauty, only strategy. Even victory had become heavy. In the ruins of the Galactic Alliance, some species tried to surrender. Others fled into the dark corners of space, hopping to hide from the storm. But humanity's vengeance had no borders. Their fleets reached every system, their soldiers landed on every world. One by one, the stars dimmed. Aboard the Nemesis, Commander Sarai Kane stood alone at the viewport. The stars looked distant, cold, uncaring. She whispered to herself, "We've become what they feared." Admiral Vega joined her, his reflection sharp against the glass. "And what's that?" "Monsters," she said quietly. He was silent for a long time, then he nodded. "Maybe, but monsters don't lose." Sarai turned to him. "And when the war over, what will we be then?" He looked out at the burning galaxies. "Alive," he said, "and that will be enough." Weeks later, the last Kelari fleet surrendered. The Collective fractured into silence. The Voltar homeworld lay in ruin. The Galactic Alliance, once the oldest and most powerful union in the galaxy, was gone. Across 1,000 systems, alien broadcasts carried the same message. The Alliance has fallen, the humans rule the stars. And in the quiet that followed, an unease settled across the cosmos. No one dared challenge Earth again. No one dared even whisper the word war. In the ruins of what was once the council chamber on Athurian Prime, a lone recording played endlessly. A voice from an old broadcast, the last words spoken before the war began. "Let them speak," an elder had once said of the humans. "It will be entertaining." Now those same halls were dust, and the only voices left were echoes carried by the wind. At the edge of the galaxy, beneath the light of a dying sun, the UNS Helios hovered in silence. Admiral Vega stood on the deck, his eyes fixed on the fading horizon. The stars no longer seemed distant. They were his now, his and humanity. He thought of his family, lost on the Cauldrous Dawn, of the promise he had made to make the galaxy remember. And as the quiet stretched across the void, he whispered, barely above a breath, "They will never forget." The storm had come and gone, and in its wake humanity stood alone, unbroken, undefeated, and feared by all who still dared to dream beneath the stars. The galaxy was silent. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Where once the light of thousands of civilizations glowed, now there was only ruin, dark worlds, shattered fleets, and the quiet hum of Terran engines. The Galactic Alliance was no more. Its proud banners had been torn down, its fleets scattered to the void. Every empire that had mocked Earth now bowed their heads in fear. The few who survived spoke in whispers, as though even saying the word human too loudly might bring death. But the war wasn't over, not yet. Because vengeance had momentum, and humanity wasn't done moving. Admiral Elias Vega stood on the observation deck of the UNS Nemesis, staring out at the wreckage of another fallen world. Below him, the once golden cities of the Voltar Empire burned, sending columns of fire into the black. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, tired eyes, silvering hair, and a face carved by loss. Commander Sarai Kane stepped quietly beside him. "They're asking for peace again," she said softly. "The Voltar Council sent a message, surrender, total, unconditional." Vega didn't turn to look at her. "We've heard that before." "They mean it this time," she pressed. "They've lost everything. Their fleets are gone. Their worlds are in ashes. They can't fight anymore." He was silent for a long moment. "And did they mean it when they bombed Mars?" he asked at last. "When they laughed while our colonies burned?" Sarai lowered her eyes. "No, sir." "Then neither do we," Vega said quietly. He turned and walked away. His boots echoed in the hall like thunder. In the command center, dozens of officers worked in silence. Holograms of worlds flickered before them, red dots marking targets, blue lines marking the paths of human fleets that now stretched across half the galaxy. Vega stood before them all, the weight of history heavy on his shoulders. "We are not done," he said. "Not until the last threat to Earth is erased. The Alliance tried to bury us in their arrogance. We will bury them in memory." He paused, scanning the faces before him. "You've all lost something," he continued. "A home, a family, a world. Remember that pain, hold it close, because pain is what made us strong." The room was silent. Every officer understood. Every one of them carried a ghost. When the Terran Marines landed on Drenti Prime, the aliens didn't resist. Their towering cities made of crystal and light stood open and undefended. The Drenti were healers, not soldiers. They came out of their homes, trembling, carrying white banners and soft voices. But mercy had become rare. The first human dropships descended like meteors, leaving black scars across the shining surface. The Drenti begged for peace. They fell to their knees, weeping, offering everything: resources, knowledge, servitude. The Marines didn't answer. They followed their orders. When the bombardment ended, Drenti Prime glowed red. The galaxy watched in horror. Even those who once supported the humans now feared them. The Alliance's survivors sent desperate messages to Earth, begging for an end. But no one on Earth answered anymore. The Terran Protectorate had become something else, a machine of vengeance that did not stop. Back home, Earth itself had changed. The blue planet that once sang of life and hope was now covered in steel. Its skies were filled with warships, its oceans with factories, its continents with command centers. The people no longer celebrated victories, they simply endured them. Every household had lost someone. Every city had its wall of names, the fallen, the forgotten, the ones who never came home. The cost of victory was written in every empty chair and silent dinner table. In the great capital of New Geneva, the Terran Council met in the shadow of the Memorial Tower. The building stretched into the sky, engraved with the words, "We remember what was taken." The councilors argued quietly, their voices strained. "We've gone too far," said one. "This isn't defense anymore, it's extermination." Another slammed his fist on the table. "You think the galaxy would show us mercy if they'd won? No, they'd have caged us, dissected us, erased us from the stars." "But we're not like them." The room fell silent. Then slowly one of the councilors looked up at the screen showing Admiral Vega's fleet cutting across another system. "No," he said, "we're worse." The turning point came at the Battle of Eros Gate, a massive wormhole nexus connecting dozens of star systems. The last fragments of the Alliance gathered there, a desperate coalition of species trying to make a final stand. They brought everything that remained, ships, weapons, even their dying worlds. It was their last hope. The humans arrived in silence. The Nemesis, the Helios, the Retribution, and hundreds more ships formed a wall of black steel at the edge of the system. Admiral Vega stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. "Open a channel," he ordered. A dozen alien leaders appeared on screen, faces twisted with exhaustion and fear. One of them, an old Kalari, spoke first. Please, enough blood has been spilled. We surrender. We will disarm. Just let us live. Vega's voice was calm. You want mercy. The Kelleri nodded. Then remember this moment, Vega said. Remember what mercy costs. He turned to his officers. Fire. The stars turned white. When the light faded, the Eros gate was gone, along with the last of the Alliance. The explosion was so massive it could be seen from 1,000 systems away. The wormhole collapsed, tearing apart space itself. The galaxy fell silent again. After that day, no one challenged Earth. There were no more fleets, no more rebellions. The Terran Protectorate became the undisputed ruler of the stars. But victory brought no peace. In the quiet halls of the Nemesis, Commander Sarai Kane found Admiral Vega sitting alone. The war was over, but his eyes were hollow. We did it, she said softly. It's finished. He didn't answer, he just stared at the stars. After a moment, she whispered, Do you ever wonder if we went too far? Vega finally looked at her. You can't go too far when you've already lost everything, he said. Outside, the galaxy lay in ashes. Worlds rebuilt under human rule, their skies patrolled by silent Terran fleets. No one dared to rise again. But in the corners of the dark, stories began to spread. Stories of the humans who came from a small blue world and burned the heavens to protect it. And on every alien world, children grew up fearing one phrase above all others. Words spoken long ago, now carved into memory. You took from us the stars, now we take them back. The reckoning was over. The galaxy would never forget. The war was over, but the stars had not healed. They hung cold and distant, their light dimmed by the smoke of 1,000 dying worlds. Where empires once shone in brilliance, only wreckage remained, silent, drifting, forgotten. The Galactic Alliance was gone. The proud symbol of unity, once a beacon of peace and progress, was now only a memory written in ash. Every world that had joined the Alliance's crusade against Earth had paid for it in blood. Humanity's vengeance had been absolute. But peace did not follow victory. It never does. Admiral Elias Vega sat alone in the captain's quarters of the UNS Nemesis. The ship, scarred, silent, and ancient now, hung above a ruined world. Below, the last remnants of the Voltar burned. Their final city had fallen 2 days ago. Vega stared at the planet's surface, the fires glowing faintly against the dark horizon. He looked tired, older. The war had carved lines into his face that even sleep couldn't soften. The door slid open behind him. Commander Sarai Kane stepped in, her boots echoing softly against the metal floor. She had not removed her armor in weeks. Sir, she said quietly, the last resistance is gone, the Voltar Council, they're all dead. Vega didn't turn, and they're civilians. Sarai hesitated, they didn't surrender. He nodded once, as though that answer had been expected. Orders, she asked. None, Vega said, it's done. Sarai stepped closer, her voice low. Is it? He finally turned to face her. His eyes were gray, cold, but beneath them burned something deeper, an old, weary grief. It will never be done, he said. Across the galaxy, humanity's rule spread like wildfire. Planet by planet, system by system, the Terran Protectorate absorbed what remained. Some worlds surrendered willingly, choosing the certainty of Terran law over extinction. Others resisted and vanished. The once proud races of the Alliance became servants, their armies disbanded, their leaders replaced by human governors. Their ships carried the Terran flag now. Their children learned Earth's history in their schools. And everywhere they whispered the same words. The humans came, the humans won, the humans never left. In the ruins of the old Galactic Council chambers on Athurian Prime, an alien historian named Luro walked through the broken marble halls, his steps slow and uncertain. Once, these halls had echoed with the voices of 1,000 species. Now they were graves. He carried a recorder in his trembling hands. History must remember, he whispered into the device. If there is no record, there will be no lesson. He paused before the shattered dais where the council's high speaker had once presided. A human flag hung there now, a black banner with a silver scar through its center. Once, Luro said softly, we thought them children, we called them primitive, we thought their emotions made them weak. He looked around at the ruins, the bones of old leaders still half buried beneath stone. We were wronged. On Earth, things were no better. The world had become something unrecognizable, half planet, half fortress. The skies above were filled with Terran ships, each one ready to crush rebellion anywhere in the stars. The oceans shimmered with factories and shipyards. The continents were divided into military districts. People went about their lives quietly, efficiently, obediently. But the laughter that once filled the cities had faded. Children grew up not under the warmth of hope, but under the shadow of command. In New Geneva, the capital of the Protectorate, a broadcast tower sent messages across every inhabited world. The message was simple. Peace through strength, order through fear. The words were spoken by the Council of Commanders, the leaders who had survived the war and replaced the politicians of old. And though their voices were calm, their eyes held the same fire that had burned entire empires. Commander Sarai Kane had not seen Earth in years. When she returned, she didn't recognize it. The streets were quiet. The people saluted her as she passed, but not with pride, with fear. She walked past the memorial walls, endless names carved into black stone. She saw her brother's name among them, and her father's. For the first time in a long while, she felt hollow. Later that night, she stood on the balcony of the Protectorate headquarters, looking up at the stars. She could see the reflection of warships gliding through the upper atmosphere. Behind her, Admiral Vega appeared. He moved slower now, his once strong frame worn down by years of command. "They look beautiful from here," Sarai said quietly. "They always do," Vega replied. She turned to him. "We won, Admiral. The galaxy belongs to us, but why does it feel like we lost?" Vega was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Because victory doesn't bring peace. It just replaces one fear with another." Sarai frowned. "Whose fear?" He looked at her, his eyes shadowed. "Everyone." Years passed. The Terran Dominion, no longer called a protectorate, ruled unchallenged. Every trade lane, every colony, every corner of the galaxy bent to Earth's will. Humanity had become what it once feared most, the empire at the center of everything. But with power came unease. The outer colonies began to whisper. Some humans, far from Earth's grip, spoke of rebellion. They remembered a time when they had fought not for control, but for freedom. The same spirit that had once driven Earth to rise against the Alliance now stirred again, this time against itself. In his final years, Admiral Elias Vega retreated from the public eye. The great war hero, the savior and destroyer of civilizations, disappeared into legend. Some said he lived quietly in the shadows of the moon's military base. Others claimed he left aboard the Nemesis, vanishing into deep space to find peace among the stars he had once set ablaze. But one thing was certain, his name would never be forgotten. On the anniversary of the Alliance's fall, the Dominion held a galaxy-wide remembrance. Every planet broadcast the same image, the Earth, shining in darkness, surrounded by human warships. And every broadcast ended with Vega's final recorded words, spoken years before he disappeared. "We were never monsters. We became what the galaxy made us, remember that." In the quiet void beyond the last human patrol, a lone probe drifted through space, carrying a single message from an unknown source. It repeated endlessly, over and over, across the dark. "Here lies the Galactic Alliance, destroyed not by evil but by fear, destroyed by those who only wanted to be left alone." The probe traveled far, beyond maps, beyond known stars. And somewhere out there, beyond the reach of human rule, a new civilization listened. They heard the story of Earth, of fire and vengeance, of sorrow and victory. And in the stillness of their world, they whispered the only lesson that mattered. Never wake the children of Earth. The stars were quiet again. But it was not the peace of harmony, it was the silence of fear. Across the galaxy, the Terran Dominion ruled without question. Its black ships patrolled the skies of every known world, their shadows long and heavy. The sound of their engines had become the rhythm of civilization itself, a constant reminder of who now commanded the heavens. The galaxy had once laughed at Earth, now it bowed to it. Admiral Elias Vega was gone. His name lived on in every Terran academy, his face carved into statues that stood on hundreds of planets. To many, he was a savior. To others, a destroyer. But to all, he was a legend, the man who had turned humanity's pain into dominance. Commander Sarai Kane had taken his place, though she never used his title. She refused the rank of admiral, she simply led. The Dominion's central fleet floated above Earth, guarding the homeworld that had birthed the storm. From orbit, Sarai could see the shimmering web of lights covering the planet, the cities, the shipyards, the memorials. It looked beautiful, but to her it felt hollow. The galaxy was quiet, yes, but it was a silence built on ashes. On the far edge of human space, a distress signal broke that silence. A colony world named Arcturus IV, small, peaceful, forgotten, had stopped responding. When Sarai's ship, the UNS Revenant, arrived, it found nothing. No fires, no signs of attack, just an eerie stillness. The cities were intact, their lights still burning, but no one moved. Sarai stepped off the shuttle with a squad of Marines, her boots crunching on dust. The streets were littered with toys, tools, half-eaten meals. It looked like everyone had simply vanished mid-breath. "What happened here?" one of the Marines whispered. Sarai's voice was soft. "The question is what," she said. "It's who." They found the answer inside the colony's central hall. On the walls, written in dark red paint, were 5 words that sent a chill through every soldier's heart. "We will not kneel again." The rebellion had begun. It started small, whispers on the outer colonies, sabotage on supply routes, signals cut off from Terran relays. The Dominion ignored them at first, then ships started vanishing. Garrisons went dark, governors stopped reporting. Sarai stood in the war room of the Revenant, holographic maps flickering with red alerts. "We crushed the Alliance for this," she murmured, "and now we're becoming them." Her aide frowned. "Becoming who?" "The tyrants," she said simply. The aide hesitated. "You can end this, Commander. The Dominion will follow you." Sarai stared at the stars. "And do what? Rule through more fire?" Back on Earth, the Dominion Council was furious. They saw rebellion not as a cry for freedom, but as treason. They demanded blood. Fleet after fleet was sent to crush the uprisings. Planets burned again, this time human ones. Sarai's messages to the Council went unanswered. When they finally replied, it was with a single directive. Enforce order, no exceptions. For the first time, she disobeyed. The rebellion spread faster than anyone expected. It wasn't just colonists. It was soldiers, engineers, and even officers within the Dominion itself. They called themselves the Children of Dawn. Their message was simple. Humanity had become what it once fought to destroy. They wanted to end the Empire. Sarai found herself torn. She had fought for Earth, bled for it, watched friends die for it. But now she saw the same fear in alien eyes that once lived in her own. The Dominion had become a reflection of the alliance they had shattered. In the quiet of her quarters, she often replayed Vega's old message, his final transmission, recorded before his disappearance. "We were never monsters. We became what the galaxy made us." She would pause it there every time, whispering under her breath, "But what did we make of ourselves?" The rebellion's largest stand came at Helios Reach, a massive shipyard that had built half the Dominion's warfleet. Thousands of rebel ships gathered there, hidden in the shadow of a red giant. They knew the Dominion would come. They were ready to die for it. And the Dominion came. The battle lasted 3 days. The stars bled. Human fought human. Brother turned against brother. The once proud Terran war hymns that had terrified the galaxy were now sung by both sides. Sarai led the Dominion forces herself, commanding from the Revenant. Her fleet tore through the rebels with mechanical precision, but her heart broke with every order she gave. She recognized some of the rebel ships, old allies, former students, friends. When it was over, the sky above Helios Reach was filled with the wreckage of both sides. Sarai stood on the bridge, staring into the fire. "We've done it," her second-in-command said quietly. "Done what?" she asked. "Restored order." Sarai shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "We've only proved we're still capable of destroying everything we love." After Helios Reach, something changed. The Dominion didn't collapse, but it cracked. The fear that had held the galaxy together began to fade, replaced by exhaustion. Even victory began to feel meaningless. Sarai resigned her command soon after. No one dared stop her. Some said she left for the colonies. Others believed she followed Vega's path, out beyond the rim where no empire could reach. The Dominion continued to rule, but its voice grew quieter. Its fleets grew fewer. Its orders met hesitation. And somewhere deep within the halls of Earth's capital, a group of young officers began whispering about change. Not rebellion, not conquest, something simpler. Hope. Years later, in the archives of the restored Galactic Forum, an alien scholar read the human chronicles aloud to his students. His voice was soft, but his words carried weight. "Here lies the story of Earth," he said. "A world that rose from dirt to command the stars, a people who fought gods and became them." One of the students raised a trembling hand. "Teacher," she asked, "are the humans still out there?" The scholar smiled faintly. "Yes," he said. "They watch us still. They are our guardians and our warning. They taught us the cost of peace." On a quiet moon orbiting a forgotten planet, a single ship rested in the dust. Its hull was old, marked with the scars of 100 wars. The name Nemesis was barely visible on its side. Inside, two figures stood at the viewport, one old, one young. The elder, his hair white, his eyes dim, placed a hand on the glass. "Do you see them?" he asked. The younger nodded. "The colonies." "No," the old man said softly. "The stars. Each one remembers. Each one forgives slower than we ever could." The younger frowned. "Do you regret it?" The old man smiled faintly. "Regret is for the living. I only hope they learned." Outside, the stars shone, distant, eternal, beautiful. And in the stillness of that endless night, a final message echoed across the dark, carried by the silent frequencies of the old Terran fleet. "We are humanity. We burned the heavens to survive. We conquered the galaxy to protect our home. And now we protect it all." The message faded, and somewhere deep in the heart of the galaxy, life began again, under the watchful eyes of those who had once unleashed true chaos and now stood as gods among the stars.